morning, everyone. It's Billy Bob here. I have my friend Manuel, and we were going to have a discussion on libertarianism and communism. I did a three-part series with Tim Moen on libertarianism, and that went rather well. Manuel did, he said he watched all three of those, and he definitely had some thoughts, and he wanted to have a further discussion, and I was so happy that he reached out to me. So welcome, Manuel. Thank you very much for getting up early and
Thank you, Billy.
Me and Tim, we had like a kind of an idea to kind of model some productive kind of discourse where we're elevating our approach better than what we see on social media and things like that. So we wanted to model, and we wanted to try and get somewhere. So I'm not sure we really got anywhere, but what we did do was definitely we had some good discussions that were definitely not inflammatory and not rude and and things like that, which is commendable. But I'm hoping maybe you mentioned that you have a background, a good understanding of Marxism, so maybe we could even have a more productive discussion. And maybe keep it civil, and maybe not, Manuel. No,
I want to keep it civil.
we'll keep it civil.
If I could turn my camera on the wall, but I don't think it will work. I could show you my bookshelf. I probably read at least 10 books on Marxism. So
okay, that might be more than I've read. We can definitely do a comparative understanding and see, but it's interesting. I'm fascinated. You said that, you were formerly a Marxist, and you identified more with Trotsky, which is okay. It's a lot of Westerners, most Westerners, I would say, identify more with Trotsky. But now you're a libertarian. So that's an interesting change that I would like to hear about. If you can maybe just, tell us about how you were, previously, what's that word? Persuaded that Marxism was a good ideology, and then being further persuaded into libertarian ideology. So,
okay,
yeah.
But first, just introduce me. I think I'm the same age than you. We're both 48. Yeah, I'm 48 years old too. Okay, so I'm 48. I work in aircraft maintenance, which I'm not really passionate about, but it's a good job for the current situation. I studied at part-time. I made a bachelor degree in history because I wanted to understand because I wanted to understand a little bit more the world. So I studied history at part-time. I became politicized, I would say, after 9/11. What struck me, of course, I was shocked by the violence of those attacks, but I rapidly realized that they were complaining for the death of 3,000 Americans in New York, but the amount of people, the amount of evil that U.S. imperialism had done, plus the people that starve in the third world, was probably way worse than what happened on 9/11. So I found that hypocrite, even if at the same time I could have sympathy for the victims. So I decided to try to. I became politicized. So, but first, most criticism of that situation were from a leftist perspective. Then came the war in Iraq. So rapidly, but I went. There were huge demonstrations in 2003 against the obviously imperialist war based on lies that was the war against Iraq. So I became politicized then. But most of the people that gave me a tract and information about that were from a leftist perspective, and they were blaming capitalism. And when I looked at the world around me, I could only just be agree with them. So time passed. I started to read. I read, and I still read them, but now I mostly listen to their podcast. But there's a website called the World Socialist website. I don't know if you know about it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
I'm aware. Yeah, they have some great articles.
yeah, but they are Trotskyists, so
Okay.
so
Doesn't mean they don't have great articles.
of course, yeah. But you and me, we have a friend in common that is Jacques Powell, and I will talk about him because I met him. And the guy is a Marxist too, but he's he's not a Trotskyist. He's a Stalinist.
Yeah, he's a good one. He's one of the good ones.
Yeah. So he's kind of like you, but he's from the same kind of Marxist ideas that you have. So so I was reading them, but at a point at my work, at work, when the podcast started, for me it was really a good thing because I was listening podcasts while I was doing some kind of job that you don't need too much concentration, like some redundant paperwork that are necessary in aircraft maintenance. So I was listening to podcasts, but in 2006, 2007, there were not yet a lot of podcasts. So, well, I found some libertarian podcasts, and I knew what libertarian were, and I would strongly disagreed with them at the time, but at least they were talking the same issues that I was interested in. So I started to listen to them, and rapidly with times, and I really found like a treasure of podcasts, because I like I said, podcasts at that time were kind of rare. You could rapidly listen to them all, and you don't have anything to listen to. So I found Stefan Molyneux's podcast at the time. He had like 500 podcasts. I listened to one. Hey, it's interesting. So listen more. And with the time, I realized that first we agreed on kind of a lot of issues, and rapidly, but I started to agree with. It took me at least two years, I would say, to abandon the Marxist ideal. There are things that like I could agree like in 10 minutes, but there were things like it took me like many years, and I had difficulty to go on with it. But at first, the first thing that really struck me is that they were against war. If there is something that I found mostly disgusting of the current system, it's the wars, the imperialism. So that's the way I kind of transition. Now, the reason I wanted to do that with you today is that, like you said, I listened to all of the three conversation you had with Tim Moyen. Me and Tim Moyen were both libertarian, probably. I would say we agree at 100%, because now I don't want to talk behind his back, but he said he would do it. And anyway, I hope he will listen to us. And I'm sure he doesn't mind that I criticize him a little bit. I find that Tim is kind of weak on criticizing imperialism and criticizing the police, the military, and their role in a class society. So that's where I can have a disagreement with him. Tim went into politics, and good. I think he made, from a libertarian perspective, he brought the idea to people, but he needs to be more politically correct than I can be, because I'm not politically correct. If if I think somebody is doing evil, I don't care saying it. I mean, if you sign up to go to war and go to Iraq or Afghanistan, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do it like if you were a hero, because you're not. So,
Right.
so I may have some tiny disagreement with him, but overall, I'm a libertarian like him. But what I find is that the way, after listening to those 3 long conversations, I say I would, because Tim was a conservative before being a libertarian, if I'm not mistaken. Me, I was a Marxist. So we have, for us, a conversation with somebody like you would be kind of very different. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Me, what I found that was lacking, is that, and I have a statement I want to do about Marxism. Me, I think Marxism, and the Marxist thinkers like Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Rosa Luxemburg, those that I read, I think they're mostly right at. I think, and now I repeat a libertarian thinker that said the same thing. I think it's Hans Hermann Hoppe, and he said that Marxism is right probably at 90% on the interpretation and the analysis of the problems, the symptom. Is saying what are the symptoms of the problem in society. I think Marxism is right at probably 90%. So I think it's a big thing. Now, do you want to tell me why I think that?
Yeah. So what is the 10% they get wrong, or why do you agree with that analysis?
Okay, but here's the thing. I think Marxism, right? Okay, but first of all, on imperialism, I think it's obviously Lenin wrote a book about imperialism, the supreme stage of capitalism.
Yeah. Correct.
So what Lenin says about that is that, and I will disagree that it's private property the problem, but what he says is that when you have a state, the big capitalists, the big rich people merge with it. They use it as their tool. So instead of having a free market where entrepreneur and company will have to offer, will have to get their customer voluntarily, and everything that they need, whether it's resource, workers, customer, it all in the libertarian ideal, everything has to be voluntary. Okay, but we're not in that paradigm. We were a little bit more in it, I would say, before 1914. But when came the First World War, it was over for a long time. So what caused the First World War is the fact that capitalists, if we can call them like that, because for me they're really they're evil people. What they do is that to get their resources and their market, but they use the violence of the state. So against competition, but they use the army of their country to start a war against their competitor, and in order to dominate the world. They will use what you call the working class, the 90% of the people, as cannon fodder with conscription, which is probably one of the worst form of slavery. They will also use the state to prevent workers' union, which it's totally evil too. So that's why imperialism is, the way Marxists describe imperialism is probably the only thing I could disagree is that the problem for me is not the private property of the means of production, but the state. I also agree with Marxist people that I would say that most of the billionaire that exists today, they're not legitimate. I mean, most libertarians see them as they're good people who brought thing, and I can say it's maybe partially, a tiny bit of it is true, but from my perspective. But for me, in order to get to have a legitimate wealth, you have to acquire it by respecting what I support is the non-aggression principle, voluntary relation, and you respect the legitimate private property of other. But most billionaires today, it's obvious that they didn't get their wealth through that. They use the state. So they use the first. The worst, I think, is the central bank. You may have a small wealth, but with the inflation of the central bank, if you have $1 billion, in a few years, your $1 billion will become $2 billion by almost doing nothing just because of the central banks. So, and it's a scam. So they use the state. They use monopolies and cartels. They use intellectual property. And I hope you agree with me that IP is a scam. I mean, you cannot own an ID. I mean, I think.
Yeah, I haven't really formulated my own opinion about how those laws ought to operate. I believe they're probably not operated in the best interest of people. I mean, maybe a shorter time frame of being able to claim the property rights. Maybe 1 year, 2 years. And then after that, it's going to be a free for all. I don't know. I don't have any specific idea about what the perfect. And that's the thing. Like, I think every situation is different. Every society is different. And we can't come up with a universal approach that's just going to be the correct way always and everywhere. Yeah. And that's one of my primary.
For me, I try to work with principle. You cannot own an ID. I mean, look, I can own an object. If you come steal it to me, it's wrong. I think I should have the right to use violence to defend me. Now, if I sell you an object voluntarily and you get the object, you decide to analyze it, to strip it and say, oh, it's made like that. I'm gonna build some myself, maybe doing them better and sell them cheaper than Manuel sold it to me. What are you stealing from me? I'm sorry, you didn't steal anything. So for me,
that's persuasive. That's persuasive.
And I think that argument should leftist people, socialist people should. Yeah, look, I'm talking. I'm on your side. I mean, for it, I'm suggesting something that will decentralize wealth and make abundant, cheap goods. So and it will prevent people from acquiring a lot of wealth. So the other thing, I said, okay, there is protectionism that billionaires benefit from, and imperialism too. So most billionaire fortune, I'm sorry, are not legitimate. So I think it's a thing most Marxists agree with. I can agree with them. I'm also against every war. I don't think there is any war that is justified. By the way, I'm a World War II revisionist, which is something that a lot of libertarians freak out. And let's be clear, when I say that I'm a World War II revisionist, that doesn't mean I support the Nazi. I think World War II was an imperialist war between two groups of evil imperialists. And from my perspective, I will add the communist regime into that as an evil one too. But I mean, the British Empire, the French Empire, the U.S. Empire were not really better than Nazi Germany. And I can even say that, look, if you look, Germany and Japan are two tiny countries. They had no empire, no resource. If you isolate them, if you do what they were done to with the Versailles Treaty, they're surrounded by hostile enemy. There is protectionism against them. I mean, I'm not supporting anything they've done, but the Western allies were so hypocrite and provocative. And since they won the war, they can. I mean, Hollywood. Every World War II movie is like a propaganda piece that just said, okay, the Allies were good, the Axis were evil. For me, they were all evil. It's like I like what Lenin said about the First World War. He said it's like two slave merchants making war at each other with their slave for a different redistribution of slaves. So I hate war. I hate imperialism, and even among many libertarians, it's probably the weakest link. A guy like Ron Paul, you probably know who he is.
Yeah.
Ron Paul is loved by a lot of people, even conservative, but they all say the same thing. I love Ron Paul, but I disagree with his foreign policies, because they're afraid. Ron Paul is totally against intervention with military, and many libertarian conservative, they're unable to go there. I had a conversation with Tim about World War II, saying that Canada should not have intervened. We were not threatened. It's not because Germany had evil ambition, but why we're gonna go die to support the evil British Empire that doesn't want to have a rival German empire? No. But even Tim had difficulty to agree with me.
So you're kind of at odds with Jacques Pauwels, our mutual friend. He definitely has a different take on things than.
Yes, but the Jacques Pauwels, and look, hey, give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna take his books. So, by the way, I'm my first language is French. So if you find that I have an accent and that English is not, I'm not perfectly fluent in English, I'm sorry about that. I'm a French Canadian. So the book, well, it would translate in English, The Myth of the Good War. So no, Jacques Pauwels agrees that World War II was not a good war, that it was an imperialist war, and that the Allies, the so-called good Allies, the British and the US, were hypocrite and imperialist. Where he disagrees that for him the good guys of World War II was the Soviet Union.
And Hitler kind of played a role because the West kind of encouraged Hitler and allowed him to develop just for the express purpose of attacking the communist state.
Oh yeah, at a point there were people in the West that didn't want a war with Germany, not from, I would say, a non-interventionist perspective like me, but because they wanted Hitler to destroy the Soviet Union. And even though I would say I'm against communism, I cannot support the fact that Hitler invaded the Soviet Union and had a war that killed maybe 25 million Russians. I could criticize the way Stalin did the war, but there would not have been all those million Russian dead if Hitler would not have attacked. And clearly, Hitler had imperialist ambition. I think he was not a threat to the West because he understood that. In fact, Hitler criticized the Kaiser of the First World War, saying he competed with the British. We should not compete with the British. We should go for an empire in Eastern Europe. We let the British Empire having India. We're going to have Eastern Europe. I mean, that's evil. But at least Hitler tried to, I think, avoid war with the West, which the West couldn't stand even. But attacking the Soviet Union, even if I'm anti-communist, I would never support, because I mean, war require that first conscription, which is slavery, taxation, inflation, which is theft. During war, a government becomes like it controls everything. There is central planning, there is censorship, and there is collateral damage. I mean, I wrote an essay on what could be a just war. And look, if there's an evil guy in a country that did some wrong to some people in another country, if you want to go take him out, I think maybe it could be justified, but you don't have the right to do collateral damage. I mean, if you stole something from me, I don't have the right to bomb to drop a nuke on your house, killing all the surrounding area. But most people that support so-called good war, they only think about the good cause. They don't see the collateral damage. They don't see the consequence, because obviously every time you do a war, the consequences are like terrible. You want to get rid of Saddam Hussein? Okay, the guy was a bad guy, but look, you killed millions of Iraqis, and now the people running Iraq are probably worst. You have all the immigrant crisis, but people don't think about that. They don't think about the collateral damage. They don't think that a war will cost trillions of dollars, impoverishing themselves, their kids, and enriching the evil billionaire. So I hate war at a point you can't imagine. So I think, because I still read some Marxists from time to time, I think we can agree on that. They agree. Yeah. We agree. So
good. Good.
Last point like I want to make.
Hey, can I make one point about Hitler?
Yeah, please.
I just want to say, the West was okay with fascism, and they tried to use fascism to destroy communism. And I mean, they created, empowered, and funded and armed Hitler, and they ushered him into an attack on the Soviet Union. Hitler didn't play ball, and that's kind of why that's another good one. I haven't even heard of that one, actually.
But it's all written by Jacques.
Oh, that's Jacques. Okay.
Jacques made an awesome work of going into the archive and showing that what the U.S. especially, how they helped to I mean, without what the U.S. did, probably Hitler would never have been able to start the war with the Soviet Union. Even though I have some different ideological difference with Jacques, I can totally agree and admire his work on that. And we can come to the same conclusion, as I said, that it was not a good war, and So,
I'm thinking, that there's a last point, and then I will let you get back to your bullet points. I'm thinking, the Western capitalists, they're the big problem. They're the primary problem, and they're willing to work with and empower and partner with the worst elements. So they work with the Nazis in Europe. They work with the narco-terrorist death squads in, Central and South America.
Absolutely.
In the Middle East, they work with the most rabid, fundamentalist, intolerant, perverters of the religion of Islam, such as ISIS, Al Qaeda, etc. So it's and then they try and get us, the people in these countries, to think that the real war is between the good democratic West and these crazy Muslims or the communists. Meanwhile, they're the ones that are partnering and using those people to further their own agenda. And so we agree that Marxism does explain that, and it does provide the best explanation for why things are as they are. That's why I'm still a Marxist, Marxist-Leninist.
Yeah, you already you probably have already seen what we call a Venn diagram.
Yes.
Okay, it's like two circles that are, I don't know. If we would take Marxism and I think the libertarian ideals, there is a spot where we agree on things, and as I find many libertarians to be kind of hypocrites, or they're simply conservative that just don't assume themselves because they realize the name of conservative is so discredited, so they want a new name. But you talk about fascism. Look, in the 1930s, it was not only Nazi Germany and Italy that was fascistic. Fascism was like everywhere, and one of the libertarian thinkers of the time, Ludwig von Mises, he explained that for him, he called it, there's two kinds of socialism. There's the Russian socialism, that is communism, and the German socialism, that is fascism. I'm sure you disagree with the term socialist with that, but what he meant is that it's when the state got control over a lot of things. And I'm sorry, but in the 1930s, in the US and Canada, in Britain, the state was also becoming very fascistic. Maybe not the same flavor as in Germany or Japan or Italy, but it was becoming very controlling. And of course, the corporation will always make them to the make it to their advantage. In fact, corporation itself came back from the 19th centuries, and it was the idea that a company, when it becomes a corporation, it become an abstract entities. Like if a company does wrong, like I don't know, when BP polluted the Gulf of Mexico by spilling oil, or in Quebec we got I don't know if it's like 10 years ago, there was a train carrying oil that derailed in a village, and a fire started and it killed many people. And what happened is that when you have a corporation, who is blamed is the corporation, which is like, you don't, it's just kind of abstract. But in a free market, a corporation would not exist because it's an abstraction. In the free market, hey, the owner of the company, those who took the decision, you are guilty. We're gonna get your share. We're gonna get your mansion, your jet, your luxury car, and we're gonna give it to the victim. But in a corporation, it doesn't work like that. It's finally end that the taxpayer will
No,
exactly. It's horrible. The rich guilty guy of those disaster don't pay because they're shielded by a corporation. The blame goes to an abstract entity, and finally nobody is punished except the taxpayers. So just to say that it's fascism when the corporation become merged with the government, which was what happened in Nazi Germany. But it's the same we have here. It's the same. It's not different. And we see that our government, the elite, if their power and wealth are just a little bit threatened, whether it is by a rival like Russia right now, or would it be by the majority of the people here, they will use their army against it. That's fascism. We live in fascism. So
I'm okay with that. I agree with that.
But I'm happy. We're not arguing. We're agreeing. So my last point was about the Russian Revolution. So I guess that you Billy Bob, you see the Russian Revolution as a great event.
Yeah.
But as most libertarian would see as a horrible thing. But here I have to come and say the revolution itself was totally, but maybe not totally, but mostly legitimate. The reason why people revolted in 1917, and I'm not talking because there were two revolutions in 1917. The first bourgeois revolution that brought Kerensky into power in I think it's February 1917, and then in October the Bolshevik came to power, getting rid of I said Zelensky, it's Kerensky. So I can only admire the revolution the Bolshevik did on so many aspects. Of course, I don't really agree with the solution that the thing that they did after, but the revolution itself, the Tsar was evil. He forced the war on the Russian people with conscription, suffering, starvation. Then Kerensky, what he did, he continued the war.
Yeah.
And I know some libertarians that still alive today wrote books. I bought their books, and one of them, I think, met or one of his teachers met Alexander Kerensky, and they asked him, why did you continue the war? Because it's the reason that the Bolshevik came to power. And apparently he said, but I had to respect treaties. And we also know today that Kerensky was given money by the U.S. government of Woodrow Wilson to stay in the war. So
I can only imagine what kind of pressures he had, carrots and sticks to continue with,
Yeah,
and it hasn't changed. I mean, that's the same
yeah,
way the West operates today. They will use carrot and sticks. They will ultimately assassinate you, regime change you, if you don't do what they want.
yeah.
And I mean, it's the global oligarchy. We call it the capitalist class. It's
Mhm.
a class-based dictatorship that has an empire that's slipping out of their grasp
Yeah.
as China ascends, as Russia ascends. So they're frantic right now. They're scrambling to try and figure out, what are we going to do to maintain our hegemony throughout the rest of the 21st century?
Yeah.
And I think that's in decline. I think it's Rome. It's like Rome was in decline. Same thing with the West.
Oh,
It's
obviously.
really exciting times, but let's not get too far afield. So we have a broad base of agreement on history. It sounds
Mhm.
like, and so it's all the more interesting how we would diverge to
Mhm.
these different ideologies. But like me and Tim were saying, there's not, some of these ideological differences. They're really made out to be way more than they actually are. Um,
A last point, if I can make, about the Russian Revolution. You know that Lenin, but I think his program of his revolution was ending the war.
yeah,
I think it was the 8 hours day, something like that, and it was to redistribute the land. So
land
now
reform.
many libertarian will could disagree with land redistribution because they
Yeah,
said that it's a theft of private property. But no, because the legitimacy of the property of the landowner came
yeah,
back from feudalism, so it's
yeah.
not legitimate property. So Lenin, by giving back the land to the peasant, I fully agree with it. I will disagree with the collectivization that came after, obviously, but many libertarians don't understand that, hey, it was not legitimate property. I think there was a guy, a noble, a landowner that owned in Russia, uh, I think more than one of the biggest farming state in the United States in terms of thousands of square miles. And look, Russia is big. I mean, the noble of the Tsarist regime were so stupid. I mean, okay, if they would have want to own their land, and they keep some land for them and they give the rest to the peasant, maybe they could have lived peacefully. No, they're not even. Those people are so fucking evil that they do things that provoke a revolution against them, and after that they came crying, oh, the Bolshevik killed my family. Yeah, I'm not saying I don't support the fact that they shot the kid of the Tsar, but the Tsar was a fucking evil or stupid guy for what he
Yeah.
did.
I mean, the bourgeoisie, they've learned from their mistakes, right? And so in the West, of course, they offer concessions. They offer
Yeah, I agree. I
a
agree.
certain quality of life because they don't want to provoke the citizenry into being ungovernable. And then they indoctrinate them. They got the propaganda apparatus. But overseas, they don't really care. They don't really care what how bad they twist the screws on your average African person or Central and South American, and they're more willing to really lessen and reduce the quality of life for those people than they are willing to do for the imperial core citizens,
Yeah,
because the citizens of the imperial core, of course, matter more to their own interests.
yeah.
But
But we're our quality of life is not becoming better. I mean, you all know our parents could buy a house for 3 times the average salary at a time where it was easy to have a job. Today, such a house costs like 10 times,
yeah,
and I don't know. We have been we have been destroyed. From my point of view, it's by inflation, but on many other reason why. So I understand that we, we, as citizen of the imperial capital, we used to get the crumble, but the crumbles are no longer very interesting. So
Yeah, I mean, I point out how in the United States, I believe the richest 0.1%, so the richest 0.1% account for more wealth than the poorest 90%.
I don't know if it's totally true, but I can prove the opposite. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's true.
Yeah, there's, obviously calculating wealth is a subjective measure and there's
Yeah.
different ways of doing
Mhm.
it. But yeah, I forget, maybe it was Oxfam or one of those organizations, calculated wealth in a certain way, and that was their calculation. So the point is there's like a lot of wealth. Like we're the wealthiest country in the world, but that wealth isn't benefited by the working class, right? It's
I
all it's
agree.
all maintained and contained, and not only the wealth but the political power.
Yeah.
So they have all the political power as well, and they can give concessions or take them back because they have. So this system, this global system, could not be better for those people, right? Like this, you can't improve the system. From their perspective, this
No.
is the nirvana. This is the best system you can ever hope to achieve.
Yeah.
And so they are going to violently resist any efforts by us,
Yeah.
by the 90%, to put in place a system that is maybe a little better, maybe more fair to the majority of people.
I
And
agree.
that's the class struggle. That's the class struggle that Marx talks about. And libertarians, by and large, kind of don't even say what I just said, and it's like the most important thing in the world.
But the thing is that I don't, if I could if I could send you there's a picture. Uh, Libertarian, we see class struggle. The difference is that we don't see the difference between the two class being on the ownership of the mean of production. We see it on those who use the state versus those who who, uh, who, who those who don't use it. Let's say they are there is the people that use the state violently, and there are those that receive the violence of the state in many ways. So that's the way I see the class division, which is not private property of the means of production, but the state. So, but if we would put a Venn diagram of that, I'm sure we would agree on quite a lot of what is happening. But of course, we disagree with the solution.
So, I mean, well, let's not make assumptions about where we disagree. I'm curious because I think this is a critical difference. So, what I just described, what I just talked about, is a class struggle
Mhm.
where you have an infinitesimally small minority of wealthy oligarchs, bankers, industrialists, the owners of the means of production, and how they capture all the wealth and power, and then how they utilize that wealth, how they wield it, and the idea the idea that there's no difference between how that really small group of psychopathic billionaires uses the state and a common sense, socialist government of by and for the working class, how they would use that tool of government, that these things are the same. Like that's a huge problem for me in embracing and accepting, the ideology that it seems like would be pushing that, what I would say would be nonsense. I'm gonna be a little inflammatory. It's nonsense. What do you think about that?
Okay, I have look. If 90% of the people one day wants to have the kind of world that you want, I have no problem if you want to do it as long as you leave me alone. Uh, the ideal libertarian society for me is quite inclusive. The principle of that world is that you respect the non-aggression principle. You respect the
Okay.
fact that all relationship between individual must be voluntary, and you respect legitimate private property, which for
So
me comes.
I mean, we gotta we gotta. So I mean, there's a lot there, but let's do it. Let's take this systematically if we can. So your original statement, which I want to try and understand. So you said, you're fine if the 90% think like me, they want to take power and they want to implement a common sense, rational government that puts the interests of the vast working class majority, if not above, at least on an equal level of the owners of banks, the owners of industries. You're for that as long as we leave you alone.
Okay, what I'm for, as I said, me, I don't consider that the private property of the billionaire, of the bank, of all those people, I don't consider it legitimate. So if you, your friend, wants to make a revolution, expropriate that unlegitimate private property from the current rulers, I don't care. I will not spill a drop of blood defending those evil assholes. If some libertarian wants to go defend Elon Musk and all his billionaire club, I think they're stupid. They have the right to, but I will never go with them. And if they die, but they'll win. As I said, play stupid game, win stupid prize. So if you want to redistribute the unlegitimate private property of the billionaire class right now, I don't care.
Okay, so Manuel,
what I care is that the wealth that is legitimate. There are some small businessmen, some people that work, some people that save their money. Like me, I worked overtime. I saved money and I bought a small farm, a 4-acre small farm. I'm searching the word. I live under my mean. I could eat peanut butter on toast while I was saving $1,000 every week because I wanted to have a small farm. And now that I have it, I consider it's my legitimate private property. If you want to expropriate it from me, that's not okay. You shouldn't do that. Now, if you want to expropriate 90% of the wealth of Elon Musk and maybe left him 1% for the 1% that could be legitimate for the innovation and the good thing he is, I think it's fair. But if you take the 99%, redistribute it, and decide that you want to put it collectively like you want, I have no problem. If you leave me alone, if you leave Tim Moyen alone, if you leave the people that don't want to be in that system, just leave them alone. If they have their legitimate private property that is not excessive, we don't talk about billions now.
So I'm curious because we just both agreed how awful and terrible the system is. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me that you don't want to have any part of improving things? That's
yes, I want.
No,
I want.
That's not what I'm hearing. You're saying leave me alone. You guys go do it. I'm good. I have my 4 acres. I don't want to be bothered.
Okay. Maybe I will rephrase it. If there would have been a revolution that would change the thing to have a system like what I want, I would be happy to participate in it. In a way, maybe me, I wouldn't want to risk my life. I'm sorry. Maybe you can say that I'm a coward, and I have no problem with that. Of course, I want things to change. I would love to see, I say, a revolution that would strip all that unlegitimate wealth. Now it's what will we do with it?
Well, no, it's not that. So I reject that. I think that's a problem. I think that, so to me, that thinking is a problem within libertarians, mm-hmm. right? Because, because inevitably their mind is filled with things from Western anti-communist propaganda, right? So their mind is immediately filled with gulags, and they're going to come and they're going to take my farm and they're going to put me in prison, and so to me, it's an embracing of false Western narratives that keep you from from actually advocating for improvement. So what I'm talking about is improvement on the system. And we all know how the system can improve. It's by making sure that the richest billionaires don't have a monopoly on political power, number one.
Agree. On that, I
and
agree.
Number two, that they don't have, account for more wealth than the poorest 90% of us, the richest 1%. So we talk improvement. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm not saying we're gonna. I mean, how can improvement be we're gonna steal your land, Manuel? So what the fuck are you talking about? Steal like that's a problem. Like in your brain, you have these ideas that have been put there by the fucking billionaires, and you can't let go of them and realize that we're talking about improvement here. That's what communism is. That's what socialism is, improving society for the benefit of the vast majority. It's not some dogmatic approach where we're going to collectivize everything and we're going to make sure that there's no private owners. We don't want people to be successful. Like that's just that's a caricature of fucking socialism that I hear all the time from libertarians. And I wouldn't talk like this to poor Tim because I have way more Anyway, I don't know if that would have been a productive way to go, Tim. But no, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's my frustration because I come up against what you just said a lot on social media, and it's frustrating because and here's what it kind of is in a nutshell. You want perfection, and unless I can guarantee you that the revolution will end perfectly, you are not willing to advocate for it and be a part of it. So you're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. I'm not saying nothing's going to be perfect.
I agree with that.
Improve things. Things will get better. How will they get better? Well, we're going to level the playing field. We're going to make sure that the billionaires don't have a monopoly on political control, which is the main thing. And then we're going to implement common sense, government rule to benefit the vast majority, the working class majority, instead of what we have now, which is governance to benefit the wealthy elite owners. Anyway, so I'm sorry, Manuel, go ahead.
I agree with you that political power is the problem. Nobody should have it. That's my position. I don't think the working class should have it. I don't think the billionaire should have it. Now, if what you want to do, if 90% of the people want to do it, if they want to do it voluntarily with the wealth they have expropriated from the billionaire, I have no problem with it. And I'm sure many libertarians would disagree with me. I'm glad that you don't want to abolish fully private property. Like if you said that you would be okay to leave small business, hey, good. So, but like, the political power is the problem. You want to remove it from the billionaire class. You want to expropriate their ill-acquired wealth. I have no problem with that.
So this is a common theme, a common discussion that I encounter with libertarians and other people. The idea that government isn't necessary. The idea that we can exist as a society, enjoy. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth now, but it's an assumption, an implication that we can enjoy all of our modern technologies, our modern standards of living, and we don't need to have a government. So to me, again, I'm going to be very disparaging. Like I think that's nonsense. That's idealism and it's utopianism, and it's really impossible. It's saying I want the impossible. Because the fact is that right now humanity is divided into nation states, with borders, and all of these borders have governments. They have to have laws. Laws have to, in my opinion, when there's large conglomerations of human people, you have to have laws that govern people's behavior, and that's in my interest. It's in my interest to have laws. Now, it's not in my interest to have a law that benefits billionaires and prejudices against the working class. And that's what I want to change. But I'm not so silly, I'm sorry, to think that laws themselves aren't necessary, or the kind of infrastructure and taxes and regulatory mechanisms that are all necessary to enforce those laws. And those laws can't be just requests, like just please, they have to be enforced. So you have to have coercion. So these are all things that are inescapable. And to suggest that I would like to have a society where there's no coercion and everybody just volunteers. Like I get it. That's what you want. But again, it's a silly thing to want. And we're talking about actual improvement. And I'm saying it's a silly thing to want because it's impossible to achieve, especially in the near term. And so right now, the big problems we talked about are oligarch control of the government, their capture of wealth, their imperial system that just, sends out misery and poverty around the developing world, extractive, taking all the resources, capturing the markets, and just ruling. And again, that's the best system for them, because they could not have a better system. It would be impossible to find a system that worked better for them, and that's why they're going to violently resist any kind of change that improves the lives of the vast majority at the expense of their own wealth and power. So they don't
I
want that.
mostly agree with that, and I agree with that.
Go ahead. Well, you can go.
When I said that I don't want a government, what I said, I don't want a monopoly of violence. If you want to have a group of people that will manage things, if you want to have laws, I don't have any problem with that. Like laws that said, don't kill, don't steal, keep your promise, things like that. I have no problem. When I have no problem with voluntary association, and I know that I'm in the minority that thinks like that, and it may always be like that. But if the majority thinks like you can have what you want. I would just ask that, unless if I'm not stealing, killing, doing fraud, doing evil stuff, just leave me alone. Is it that? Is it too much asked?
Well, so I mean, that's if that's the fundamental rock bottom foundation of your ideology, I think it's not persuasive to me, right? Because I want to, I'm not so self-centered and self-interested. I mean, I see that, I'm very happy. I mean, I'm very fortunate in my own life, but I look around and I see that life isn't offered to a lot of people. And so
I agree.
So
I agree.
I'm interested in, changing the system for the better. And I recognize that the system is not going to change for the better because, the owners of the system are going to violently resist improvement. So
I agree.
Okay, so we already talked about it. But what is improvement, right? Improvement. So your concern is that people like me that, are saying these things are going to win the revolution and then do things that are gonna, upset you. And so you're worried about that. So you're worried that, what happens after is maybe not going to be as good as you wanted. Maybe you fear it might even be worse than the status quo, which that might be your concern. So that's an interesting concern that I should not dismiss, and I should really appreciate and reflect on. And like what can I say to assuage these fears that what comes after isn't going to be something that you're going to want. So I'm struggling to articulate a persuasive explanation why that shouldn't be a fear for you. Number one, you're not a billionaire, no. Right? Like you're working class. Like, I mean, we're all working class. So like, why would we make a system worse than it is? That doesn't make any sense. So again, I think that fear is inculcated. That fear is inculcated by propaganda from the billionaires, where they shove fake historical narratives down your throat, and they totally, get you to have a negative opinion of actually existing socialist governments, actual existing socialist leaders like Stalin and Mao. And I think that's where this stems from, is an acceptance of, Western ruling class propaganda designed to turn the working class against their own best interest, which is against socialism, against the leaders of the socialist movements that have done, more for the humanity than anyone else, really. And we never got to episode 4 with Tim, he's very lucky, because we were probably going to talk about Mao and what great things he did. I mean, China, of course, is the ultimate what's the word, success story. Like China is the proof of the superiority of a common sense communist leadership that isn't dogmatic. It doesn't just, hey, nobody's going to own the means of production. No, we're going to abolish private ownership. No, they did things in a way that is in the best interest of the Chinese people. Now, a lot of libertarians, again, I'm thinking they are embracing anti-China propaganda, and they probably have a terrible view of China. They probably think China's authoritarian. They probably think China is evil, and they don't care about freedoms, and everybody in there thinks that they're going to get thrown to the prison or have their organs harvested if they speak out against the government. And of course, those are thoughts that are put there by the wealthy elites in order to keep the working class from recognizing and pursuing their own best interest. And the own best interest of the working class is opposite to the interests of the ruling elite, because it's a zero-sum game. Politics is a zero-sum game. Right now, the oligarchs have 100% control of politics, and any increase into that by the working class is going to come directly at their expense. So they resist it. Go ahead, Manuel. Tell me how bad China is.
Okay, if I understand you,
yeah,
you reject the idea that Stalin, Mao murdered a lot of their people. You disagree with that?
Well, I mean, what is murder? We could say the same for Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, like any leader. We can make that argument that he murdered a lot of people.
Yes, and Abraham Lincoln did awful things too. And I'm not a supporter of the Southern U.S. with their slave. I think they were evil.
So what I would say is there's a context. There's a context. The context is what matters. And in the context of the Russian Revolution, the Soviet Revolution, you're in a war. You can either surrender or you can fight. So those are your two choices. So again, I'm thinking the status quo is so evil that I think we ought to fight to overturn it. Now, I'm not advocating any violence. I'm not saying I'm gonna be initiating a violent revolution. I'm hoping it can happen peacefully, but I do know that
it won't happen peacefully. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, I know that wasn't an option in the Soviet Union. I know the minute the revolution started, that the West, 15 different Western countries sent militaries to defeat the communists, to join the White and defeat the communists. So peaceful transition wasn't an option. Why? Do we blame the working class because peace wasn't an option? No, because their option was maintain their life under oppression, or violently resist and fight. And so that's what they did. So am I going to blame them for the people that died in the revolution, or in the tumultuous years that directly followed the revolution, where you're encircled by capitalist forces both within and without? Are you gonna just surrender and say, okay, hey, we won a revolution, we had about 10 good years, but you know what? I think I don't want to fight anymore because people are going to die. So I'm just going to surrender. I mean, so that was the options that Stalin had. So there's a context, and I think the West, obviously intentionally perverts the context, exaggerates the bad things, doesn't talk about the good things. But I think most of what Stalin did was absolutely justifiable, and it's about informing yourself regarding the context, the situation, the choices that he was facing. And if you do that, it's definitely, there's a strong defense to make in each of Stalin's major decisions. But to think that in a war that killed 25 million people, you're going to behave and we're going to hold him to the same standards that we hold Joe Biden to right now. Like, Joe Biden is just funneling, bombs and weapons over to Israel so they can genocide the Gazans, right? And nobody really cares. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But we get up in arms. Stalin repressed the people that tried to violently overthrow him and undo the revolutionary gains that were made. And so he must be a monster. So and again, he was facing, a Nazi invasion, the biggest land invasion in the history of the known universe. 3 million people invaded the Soviet Union, hell-bent on just mayhem and destruction and implementing a racist government, right? That said that Aryans were superior and Slavs were inferior. Like, so in that context, when 25 million of your people are dying, like normal, norms, moral norms that we think that we want to uphold here in the comfort of our suburban, in your case, rural domicile. Like it's silly. It's silly to apply these things, but that's what I see people do. They are confused. They don't know the reality of the situation. They listen to all this propaganda, exaggerating death tolls, exaggerating crimes, depicting him as to be a bloodthirsty madman, just caring about power that made everybody afraid about him, like a one-person dictatorship. All kinds of nonsense. And then say, hey, is that what you want? Because that's what you're going to get if you overthrow us. That's what you're going to get if you, like, it's stupid. And people shouldn't believe that. People should be smarter. And I think that, when I say people, I'm talking about libertarians. I'm sorry.
Okay. I don't fully agree with what you said, but okay, at least compared to most libertarian, I probably agree partially with you more than most libertarian. Okay, me, I think you said that context matter. I'm not disagreeing with that. We have to, but I think that basic moral principles are more important. So now, I'm gonna be pragmatic. I know that there was a civil war in the Soviet Union after the revolution. Do I support the fact that the West, you said 15 countries sent army against the Bolshevik? No, I don't support that. Okay? The same way I don't support the fact that Trotsky imposed conscription with terrible repression, because all that have a common point. It's a violation of the non-aggression principle. So the fact that the Bolshevik wanted to defend themselves against the evil white armies allied with the evil imperialist power, I have no problem with that. If it's done, of course, voluntarily. Don't enslave people. Don't put a gun on my head, say, Manuel, you have to come with us, fight the white army if I don't want. I'm not saying the white army and the imperialists are good. No, I hate them too. Okay. And they should not have done that, because the troops that they brought to Russia were mostly conscript, and they forced their citizens to pay for that. And it was only to kill more people for a struggle of power. And I'm pretty sure that there would have been no civil war. Probably that the communist regime would have been less violent. And I think even my friend Jacques Powell said that he recognized that, because I had a long discussion with him. He said, yeah, that Stalin was not a very agreeable man, but like he said, that he didn't have choice. And I'm really to concede to you that a part of it was because of Western imperialism, which I despise, which as a libertarian I oppose, and many so-called libertarian hates me because I expose imperialism. And they can go fuck themselves and go to hell, because I don't care about their feeling. Imperialism is fucking evil. But the principle that I hate imperialism would be the same that I hate how communism works. So I understand what you said, but there are things that communist regime have done that, for me, it's unacceptable morally. If you want to do it voluntarily, if you want to grab to associate, if you want to associate with millions, billions of people to create a socialist society with, as like I said, with expropriated private property that was not legitimate, like the czarist, like the billionaire today, I have no problem. And I'm ready. I don't think socialism is a rational system that can work economically, but I'm ready to concede that with the advance of technology, especially with, what is a 3D printer, and have you watched Star Trek?
Yes.
Okay, Star Trek, they have replicator, which I love the idea, and I think that once you have those things, it's a new paradigm.
Yeah.
The aspect of a free market, which I like and support the basic morality of it, I'm ready to accept that maybe a form of socialism or communism could work, especially with things like replicator. And look, if most of humanity wants that, I have no problem. I will not use violence. I may even cooperate with you, because me too, I want a better world. And in a sense, I'm ready to fight. Look, I'm exposing war. I lost friends in the last years just because I said that Russia was provoked to invade Ukraine. I'm not supporting the invasion of Ukraine, but I think, do you agree with me that Western imperialism and NATO provoked Russia?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I lost some friends for
Well, I
that.
understand. I understand.
When I criticize the way that the politician keep the people brainwashed and weak, when I criticize that, I anger people around me. So I think I do my part in a fight for a better world. It's like I say, it's a part of your solution.
Yeah,
That
and I definitely do not want to. I'm not speaking personally. Like everything every criticism I'm making is not of you personally. It's of the ideology and the basic libertarian movement. So you touched on a lot of things. And number one, let me just commend you, because no, I think definitely as a libertarian, I appreciate the ways in which you're willing to incur the wrath of other more conservative leading libertarians. And so I mean, I definitely want to give you props for that, because it can't be easy, and you're being principled, and so I appreciate that. But my concern is, so let's look at what you said about you opposed Trotsky implementing the draft. And so I think this illustrates a couple things. So this illustrates, and I think it's would be a widely held libertarian view, that the draft and coercion and putting a gun to people's head and making them engage in a war is wrong. So the thing is, here's the problem with that. And of course, in a vacuum, that's true, but we don't live in a vacuum. We live in reality. In reality, when you have the ruling class, the imperialists, that are willing to put a gun to the head of their citizens, if the resistance to that is not willing to do the same, they're just going to lose. So what does that mean? So what it means is, when you object to Trotsky ordering conscription, you are really saying, I want to surrender. I don't want to fight. We're going to lose, and it's okay. We'll just live perpetually under this imperialist system, and that's what I want. That's it. That's what you're saying. And so to me, and that's why I think libertarianism is compatible with imperialism, because libertarianism doesn't, and it's the same with anarchism. Libertarianism and anarchism don't really threaten the status quo, because they avoid engaging in coercive force and the necessity of class struggle. And when we have a class struggle, if we're going to win the class struggle, we have to do what it takes. And what it's going to take is violent resistance, because they're going to be violently resisting us. So if we say, hey, just volunteer, then we lose, in certain situations. And that's why. So the principles the context matters. Of course, there's going to be times when conscription isn't necessary, when I would agree with you. It is wrong to force this person to go to this fight. For instance, it's wrong when the bourgeoisie does it. But if our choice is lose the revolution, lose the entirety of the Soviet Union, or fight against the fascist invaders and conscript people to do it, like, I understand you have to conscript people to do it, because by not doing so, you just surrender. And then the fascists control Eastern Europe, fascists control Moscow. It's like, that's something I'm willing to conscript for. So, it's all about, the context. But that's what I see. I see the principles of libertarianism. So I hear Tim say often was, hey, just respect my person and my property. That's the fundamental basis of my ideology, and everything comes back to that: respect my property, respect my person. And the thing is, I can come up with examples when I would advocate not doing that. And so I think to me, that's just it's a flawed foundation for understanding, because I think our understanding and what we advocate for ought to be based in actual reality. So the reality of class struggle, imperialism, global domination by psychopathic billionaires, and how we can resist that, overcome that, and improve upon that situation, not just for the people of the imperial core, but people all over the world. And, to do that, to say that we can't engage in coercion to do that just means we're not going to be able to do it. So coercion is going to be necessary. Coercive taxation is going to be necessary. Maybe coercive conscription. I mean, Russia's not conscripting right now. Neither are the Gazans. But if Putin thought it was necessary to conscript because, NATO's now getting in the army, like, I understand it. Like, we need to resist. And so sometimes our principles, our universal principles, aren't really universal because they wouldn't apply in certain contexts. So that was one of the main themes I tried to hit home with Tim was, to think that you can have this universalist approach where, this particular principle is going to be upheld always and everywhere is a little misguided, because we have to let the context determine our strategy, our plan, and we're going to make mistakes. So the other thing I wanted to touch on, I don't know if you wanted to respond to that. The other thing I want to touch on was, you seem to have this idea of what communism and socialism is, and you said you don't think it could work out. And you said maybe in the future if we have replicators. My thing is, like, again, I think you have this idea in your mind about what communism and socialism is that is different from my idea. I think China's doing it now. Like, China's showing what a socialist government can do, and they're I mean, we could talk about that, but I mean, they're unprecedented in their success. It's impossible to overstate their success. The lack of crime, the skyrocketing of prosperity, the happiness with the central government of the people. I mean, all the lives they saved during, we don't even want to get into the COVID thing. But no, China is a tremendous, it's the proof of the superiority of a government that looks at and wants to further the interests of the vast majority. The Western governments only care about the wealthy minority. And China is showing that when you have a government in place that really is concerned about the interests of the working class majority, they can do amazing things, unheard of things that in the West we cynically think are impossible, because all we know in the West is oligarchy. All we know is capitalist dictatorship. We don't know what a government of, by, and for the people could actually do. And so I think that colors a lot of the libertarian, understanding about government, because they only know government that's controlled by the bourgeoisie. Okay, I really went on, Manuel. I want to apologize for soapboxing.
No. Look, I appreciate the conversation. Do you think? Okay, look. Do you think since the beginning of the conversation, can you agree that I have tried to be conciliatory,
yes,
to concede some agreement with you, yes, to have a friendly approach?
Yes.
Did you expect that from a libertarian?
No, I did, Manuel. I expect.
Okay.
No. So, no, I fully did. Like, and I thought that's kind of why you wanted to talk to me, just so we could, we could show how seemingly ideologies that are really different from each other can engage and talk about these issues, you know, in a friendly way. And I hope I hope I'm being friendly. I hope I'm not coming across as not being friendly.
I think you believe and you are sincere. I'm sure you are well intended. Well intended. Is that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well
Uh,
intended. Yeah.
Now, there are historical facts that you believe in that I think I disagree. Can I be wrong? Yes. When there's a war with history, that when you have different ideology that compete, they will try to rewrite history in their favor and exaggerate or lie for things against their opponent. I wasn't there in the Soviet Union or in the Ukraine when there were starvation. I wasn't there in China during Mao. I tend to. Is it possible that the imperialist capitalist propaganda exaggerate that toll? I guess sure. Is it possible that the Western allies exaggerate the war crime of Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan? I guess it's possible. I also think it's possible and obvious that, you know, Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan committed horrible crimes, like the Western Allies did too. But one of them won the war. The reason I don't believe socialism, I have three main arguments against socialism. First, it's the lack of incentive. Second, it's the concentration of power that it requires. And third is the price calculation thing. That I think it's three legitimate criticism of socialism. Now, as I said, the one I care about morally, because moral for me is the most important thing, is their coercion. If socialism has to be is going to be a voluntary association, I will never oppose it. If it's going, if you can show me that it works, to my surprise, I'm gonna be happy to maybe join you. But I don't think so. Again, there's a nuance. The nuance is that there are some examples of voluntary cooperation of people putting their property together that have success. So does that kind of so-called socialism could work? Yeah, for me it's always to be voluntary. And I understand what you said, because I already made. I remember when I was a Marxist, I used the example of, if there is a slave revolt and some slave don't want to do anything, what we do with them? Because them doing nothing can prevent us from freeing us from slavery. Do we have the right to force them? At a point, I was thinking that almost, yes. But, you know, see, if I had to be, you know, if I take the example of the civil war in Russia, maybe I could be a tiny more sympathetic on the side of Trotsky than on what was his opponent, Kornilov or Kolchak. Is it that?
You got me. I'm not sure. I know
the leader of the White Army, I think, is General Kornilov or Admiral Kolchak.
Okay, that sounds familiar. Okay, so I see what you're saying. So because Stalin was the leader of the Red Army. Trotsky was the leader of the Red Army. That was his title. And yeah, Kolchak was probably the leader of the Whites. That could very well be. For experts out there, if we're not mistaken, we apologize.
Even though I disagree with the communist solution, I think I would have been a tiny more sympathetic to to the Red Army because I know that what the White Army was defending was absolutely terrible. So,
Yeah.
but if I'm put in that situation, personally, I would probably prefer to escape and live my life than risk it. As I said, you can call me a coward. Uh,
No, I would probably do the same thing. So,
but if the idea that's, I think, look, I think we got a great conversation, but I think there are points that we're gonna have to agree to disagree. For me, forced conscription is, I cannot accept that. I can understand why you would like to impose it because you think the cause is just. And as I made the example, if there's a slave revolt and some slave don't want to participate in the revolt, and the revolt of the slave, if it fails, you know what will happen again after. You know what happened to every time there was a failed revolution, like Spartacus, like I know the commune, la Commune de Paris, the Paris Commune in 1871.
Yeah.
I mean, the Paris Commune murdered people, but what the bourgeois government did to the Paris citizen after was like 20 times, I think 10 times worse.
Yeah, they want to
So
send
I
a message.
understand.
Don't do
And
that
Karl Marx and Lenin understood that when you do a revolution, you must not. If you fail it, what awaits you after will be awful.
Yeah.
I can understand that point, but for me, I mean, all those problems, the existence of the Tsarist regime, the First World War, the imperialism, the fact that capitalists use the state, enrich themselves, forbids worker unions. It's all violation of the non-aggression principle, and it's what I expose. So, if the Bolsheviks want to conscript and collectivize things, I'm gonna have to disagree too because it's the same principle I defend. But
Okay.
I try to give you the most point that I can agree with you. That's why I wanted to do that conversation. And
No,
yes, go ahead.
And yet what? And yet you're still frustrated, or you're
Not at all. No. I appreciate. No, I still have friends. What I'm searching for is intellectual honesty. There are libertarians that I probably agree at 95% with them on principle, but we can't stand each other. I find them intellectually dishonest. I know there's a guy who unfriended me and blocked me on Facebook recently because why? Because I criticize Israel.
Yeah.
Because I said that Israel was always portraying themselves as the victim, while they do evil thing to the Palestinian. And I'm probably not 100% with you on the situation, but I would say I side a little bit more with the Palestinian. And a lot of libertarians are licking the boots of Israel, and some of them hates me for that.
Yeah, not all of them, definitely. You mentioned you kind of grew up on the World Socialist website, and not grew up, but your politics was informed by the World Socialist. It's interesting that my politics was actually informed by antiwar.com, which is
I absolutely love
and before I embraced the communist label, the Marxist-Leninist label, I mean, I was trying to figure things out, and I was reading what they were saying, and it was good. I really appreciated their libertarian anti-war stance. A lot of those guys were great. That one guy ended up passing away. He lived in San Francisco. I forget. He was like Justin Raimondo.
Yeah.
So great. Really helped me appreciate, understand things in a great way. But I would like, I hope I'm not being too imposing here. I want to kind of push the issue on one topic because it's kind of where we're at, and I didn't hear you respond to it.
Sorry.
Well, it's just the idea that if Trotsky did something else other than conscription, you know, it's just it's a surrender. It's you're surrendering. You're saying, okay, well, we tried and now we're going to surrender. And so, I mean, in that way, like, even though you oppose on principle conscription, in this instance, don't you agree that it was the right thing to do? Or do you think that they should have surrendered? Because to me, that's the conundrum that you're in when you're championing these principles and values. When those principles and values end up being a suicide pact and resigning yourself to the status quo, and not ever being able to improve things because you're gonna continue this oligarchy, this global empire, what do you do then? So that's why I'm pragmatic. On principle, yes, it's not a good idea to put a gun to somebody's head and say they're going to go fight. But in certain circumstances, I think that it's the right thing to do. So, are you able to understand that maybe principle?
I understand, but I disagree. I still disagree. Okay. I understand, and as I said, I put the situation on a principle. Like, have you seen the movie Spartacus? Spartacus?
A long time ago, I think I did, but I don't even remember the plot.
It's at the end, the slave lost.
Are you not entertained?
It's horrible what happened to them. The Roman crucified thousands of them on the roads.
Okay.
So you don't want to lose when in such a cause. Now, for me, the Russian Revolution, I would not say it's equally, because the struggle against the enemy may be legitimate. The outcome, what you will do after, is something else, and that's where I have a disagreement with the Russian Revolution. Now, me, I think I'll stay on the side that of the moral principle. Now, I could ask the question: was it possible to try to convince people in another way? Now, also, can we look at, was the fact that imposing conscription, did it backfires more than it brought good benefits? Because it's a question to ask as a libertarian in a free market. You ask, when you do something, there's a cost and a benefit. Imposing conscription can have consequence and backfire. And I know that I think there's the conscript sailors that were really helpful when to start the revolution. Trotsky had to kill them because they revolted at a point. So so
that was a big incident. So what you're saying is you don't agree that their choices were surrender or conscription. You're saying I'm giving you a false dynamic, and it's not one or the other. They could have done something better, something different.
I understand, but for me, I don't see how the slavery of conscription could be acceptable.
Yeah.
When you accept to do that,
what I would say is, if you were living under the czars and you were one of the peasants in Russia, you yourself might not even need to be conscripted. You might be a volunteer. That's
a good point. Yeah, I like that point. Yeah, maybe
but the suburban me and you in our soft luxury that we exist in.
That's a good point.
In that area, we would think differently.
Yeah,
but
maybe if I was a poor peasant, landless, and the Civil War happened, there's probably more chance I would have joined voluntarily the Red Army than the person I am today. Yeah, you have a very good point. But still, I think that I should have had the freedom of choice to do it. But of course, in that situation, there's more chance I would have joined it. Maybe.
No, I think that's true. And so I don't think conscription, was definitely something they had to do for the majority of people. I think conscription was necessary. It told you, hey, guys, you don't have any choice. There's going to be consequences if you don't. We're going to be coercive about this. And who knows how many people that wouldn't have otherwise volunteered came. But I argue that it was a necessity. And it was the revolution was going to fail if they didn't do that. And so you can disagree with that, but the greater point is what happens when your principles cause, in reality, result in not being able to improve reality. Then your principles become a liability, and that's why I am not a universalist. We're saying, hey, this principle is what I'm going to champion regardless the consequences.
I appreciate this conversation. I think, as I said, the argument you made are, even if I still disagree with that for the conscription, I like the way you construct it. You do it, I would say, with intelligent, and I can admire that. When I have discussion with Jacques, even if he's a Marxist,
Leninist,
Stalinist.
Yeah, that's my work.
Oh,
I'm wondering. They're calling me on both my phones. We'll live on air. We'll get to see if they want me to do. Hello. Can I call you right back, Nino? I'm going to call you right back. I'm in a live broadcast. That's your extension? I'll call you right back. Okay. Yeah, my work. It's okay.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, I end with that. I appreciate your devotion. I think you're quite intellectually honest the way you construct your argument. You're not just saying we have to do conscription because we have to do it and shut up. No, you try to build a convincing argument, and I can appreciate that. Me, what I would reply is that you want me to violate the non-aggression principle by accepting conscription, but I will tell you that all the evil that came before that rest on the violation of non-aggression principle. That's why I want to stop that the circle of violence. So I'll give you that what you're fighting against was quite evil. Your cause can be somewhat good, but for me, and I understand that it could have failed. Me, I think that not necessarily. I think that when things are done with voluntarily, I'm convinced they are always more efficient at the end. So now I understand you have to go to work.
Yeah, I got to call back.
Thank you. I'm really happy with this conversation. I'm pretty sure do you agree that we still have a lot in common?
Of course, of course.
Great.
And I think me and Tim have a lot in common, even if he doesn't even have as much in common as I do with you because of your Marxist background. I mean, it really opens up avenues for discussion, which probably weren't able to have with Tim because he hasn't studied Marxism. He's not that familiar with our perspective on history and
I had many discussions with Tim's where we were kind of debating, and I can say that the last point, we had a discussion about Remembrance Day on November 11, when all the bourgeois politicians that cry and say, "Oh, the brave soldier that dies for freedom." When you and me, we know that they didn't die for freedom; they died for imperialism. Yeah. And some libertarians, so-called libertarian, send me hate messages. On November 11, my message box on Facebook Messenger sometimes is filled with hate messages calling me names and things like that. So
that's what you get when you're principled.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Billy Bob. Is there something else you want to say?
Well, let's do it again. Let's ruminate on this discussion, and let's think if we have a follow-up, because
or maybe we could do a video with Tim, or maybe you could bring someone else.
Yeah, no, I'm up for that. I am definitely wanting to do that. So I'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know what I come up with. But thank you so much. I'm gonna hit end recording, and then we'll speak briefly right after. Here we go.